Hey guys, tonight we slip off our sandals and step into the world of ancient indulgence. Marble walls echo faintly as sunrise rolls over the rooftops of a bustling Roman city. You're waking up inside a domus, a private urban villa reserved for the moderately powerful, just powerful enough to ruin your week with logistics. Today, you're not a senator or a soldier. You're something more curious. You're a Roman orgy planner. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time below. I love knowing who's listening in the quiet corners of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ceiling above you is painted with fading stars. Cracks in the plaster snake along the corners. A lizard clings to one wall blinking. You exhale and rise slowly, legs creaking like old hinges. Your feet meet cold mosaic tile. Red, black, and ivory tesserae form a swirling fish pattern beneath you, still slick with condensation from the night's chill. You open the shutters. Pale orange light filters through narrow streets. Terracotta rooftops stretch in rigid rows toward the forum. Laundry lines sag between windows. A cart creaks below its single donkey, indifferent. The air smells of damp stone olive oil and the distant, persistent rot of overripe figs. The villa is quiet. Your body slaves await commands just outside your cubicula. You don't call them yet. You need a minute. Today is a planning day. The feast, your specialty, is scheduled for tonight, and unlike most banquets, this one will push Roman boundaries. A soft rustle near the threshold signals movement. A boy enters silently holding your breakfast tray, one peeled boiled egg, 3 slices of black bread, and a cup of watered-down wine still steaming. You don't speak. He places the tray on a bronze stand and backs away. You eat mechanically. The egg tastes faintly of salt. The bread is hard enough to dent marble. The wine is weak and tepid, but it goes down easily. Once finished, you wash with a cold rag from a bronze basin. No bath yet. That comes later. You dress simply for now. A linen tunic, loose and slightly stained. No one important will see you until afternoon. You tie a belt of twisted wool, then slip on worn sandals, the straps digging into calloused skin. Outside the main hall, your staff waits in a quiet line. 10 people. 2 note-takers, 1 errand runner, 1 spice handler, 4 food preppers, and 2 silent, nervous boys responsible for the body decorations. The younger one holds a box of lead-based face powder and dyed oils. The other carries a bag of polished seashells to reflect light onto favored skin. You pass through the atrium, noting the impluvium in its center, its pool dry. Rain has been infrequent. A dusty garland still floats in the corner, limp and gray. The house is owned by a friend of a former praetor who fled tax charges. You're borrowing the space until someone notices. That could be tomorrow or 10 years from now. Property records in Rome are often scrolls in a pile half-burned and unread. You stop at the garden colonnade. The sky brightens to a pale peach. Vines twist up the white columns speckled with mildew. Somewhere a rooster gives one final uncertain crow, probably from the neighbor's illegal coop, Chickens are technically banned in this district, but enforcement is sporadic and usually bribed. You pull out your wax tablet and stylus. The list is long. Guests, entertainment, fragrances, sacred compliance, musical cues, wine pairings, lounge furniture. You tap the edge of the tablet against your chin. You make your first mental note acquire more rose petals. The current supply won't carpet half the triclinium. You also need 3 new draperies, red silk if possible. Anything that catches torchlight. Failing that gold-dyed wool which smells like fermented sheep but looks fine in dim lighting. The guest list includes senators, merchants, and one returning military tribune who insists on being seated next to his ex-wife's younger brother. You don't ask why. You just accommodate. The house cook approaches. He's already sweating through his tunic. In one hand he holds a greasy scroll of recipes, in the other a broken ladle. He reports 3 key issues. First, the flamingo meat has turned. Second, the garum supplier sent a thin blend not suitable for elite palates. Third, the honeyed locusts have hatched prematurely and flown away. You nod slowly. You authorize new purchases. Replacement meat peacock, if available, otherwise pork disguised with saffron. Better garum, send the runner to the docks with a double bribe. As for the insects, you'll improvise. One fringe historical theory claims the Romans deliberately fed bees wine to make their honey taste fermented. You've tried it. It doesn't work. But you keep the rumor alive. It sounds expensive. As you walk toward the side courtyard, a pair of tunic-clad slaves jog past you carrying an oversized amphora. One stumbles slightly. You don't correct them. If it breaks, it's their wages. The courtyard itself is bare except for a cracked sundial and a statue of Minerva missing one arm. A cat sleeps beneath it, curled among discarded grape stems. Here you check the staging area. Piles of firewood. Clay lamps stacked neatly. 3 sacks of dried rose petals, still not enough. 2 amphorae of low-tier wine for the staff. A platter of glass cups with only 4 visible chips. You scribble notes. You remember last month's incident. A senator's son drank from a chipped cup, cut his lip, and claimed divine punishment. He demanded an augury. You provided one. A chicken was dissected. Its liver declared favorable. The son recovered. You were paid double. Historians still argue whether Roman banquet culture was truly democratic in social structure or merely performative. Either way, it's your job to uphold the illusion of decadent balance. You close your tablet. Time to move again. The market opens soon, and you need cinnamon. You leave the villa by the side entrance, careful to avoid the pile of crushed amphora shards from last night's delivery. The narrow alley smells of mold and donkey sweat. A broken tile crunches under your heel. Overhead, a line of pigeons shifts on a leaning ledge, feathers puffed in silence. The market is already alive. Vendors shout about olives and turnips. Someone's roasting chickpeas near the archway. The scent of charcoal and cumin clings to the air, mixing with human breath and wet limestone. You move slowly, knowing you'll be here for a while. In your right hand, you carry a wax tablet again, but this one is purely for supply orders. Last night you scribbled the main checklist in dim torchlight. This morning you refine it. First item, cinnamon sticks. You need them to flavor the baked dates. Roman elites expect spice. Imported rare expensive spice. It doesn't matter that it comes from southern Arabia by way of Nabatean traders. All that matters is that it smells foreign and burns the tongue slightly. You stop at the third stall on the left, the one with the striped canopy. The merchant is asleep. You wait. He wakes with a snort eyes. You suspiciously, then shrugs as if disappointed you're not an inspector. You ask for a handful of the darkest cinnamon. He hands you dried bark curls. You sniff. Not fresh enough. You request another sample. He hesitates, then pulls a small cloth bundle from under the counter. This one smells better, pungent, almost sour. You nod once and mark a symbol on your wax tablet. He will deliver 2 bundles to the villa by mid-morning. If he doesn't, you won't pay. You say this aloud. He nods too quickly, then tries to smile. You don't return it. Next, you need silk. You walk past the fruit sellers, ignoring their half-hearted cries. You dodge a boy chasing a runaway chicken and sidestep a merchant arguing over salt prices. You reach the cloth section. Here, awnings ripple in the breeze. Reds, blues, golds, a few greens. Most are linen or rough wool. You seek something finer. Silk is rare. Most available here comes by caravan through Palmyra, smuggled or falsely labeled. The best stall, run by 2 twin brothers with identical stammers, keeps a stash of real Eastern silk in a cedar chest hidden behind layers of ordinary cloth. You signal discreetly. One brother disappears inside the tent, while the other distracts a Germanic tourist touching everything. You are shown a roll of violet silk. Thin, almost translucent, with a faint sheen that catches sunlight like glass. You need 3 togas worth. You don't care if it is for decoration or wearing. It just needs to shimmer. The price is absurd. You agree to half payable in 2 parts coin today, wine tomorrow. You mark this on your tablet too. A poet once claimed silk felt like kissing a cloud. You've kissed clouds. They itch and cost too much. You move on. The next items are cumin and dates. Not fancy dates. Just regular ones for stuffing with nuts. Cumin, however, must be fresh. You need it to disguise the taste of yesterday's lamb, which will be repurposed as today's sausage. The spice seller is a woman with ink-stained fingers. She's reading a scroll when you approach. Without speaking, she hands you a small dish. You taste a pinch. Your tongue goes numb. Perfect. You purchase 3 small clay jars wrapped in papyrus leaves and tied with twine. You carry them yourself. They're expensive, and last time the errand boy dropped 2 and blamed the wind. The date seller is easier. He recognizes you and offers a discount. You pay full price anyway. You don't want him cutting corners next time. His daughter bags the dates while he makes conversation about the weather, which you ignore. On your way back, you pass a street performer balancing a clay jug on his forehead while singing about Neptune's horse. He's moderately talented. You consider hiring him for background noise. Then remember he once urinated near a senator's garden. You keep walking. You stop briefly at a food stall for pickled onions wrapped in fig leaves. You eat 3. They sting your sinuses and make your eyes water. A child watches you in silence. Back near the main street, you pass under a crumbling arch. 2 beggars sit beneath it, each with a wooden bowl. One is missing a thumb. The other has painted eyes on her eyelids and pretends to be blind. You drop a single coin in the first bowl. The sound it makes echoes more than you expect. Just before turning onto your street, you remember the dancers. You double back to a small building behind the candle shop. No sign, no decoration, just a brass handle with a faint thumb groove. You knock twice, then once more quickly. A woman answers. Middle-aged, grease on her hands. She waves you in. Inside, 6 young dancers stretch on the floor. 2 girls, 4 boys, all thin, all tired. You ask who's available. She says they're all available for the right number. You pick 3, 1 girl, 2 boys. They nod slowly, barely meeting your gaze. You give instructions, basic movement only. Arms, hips, no acrobatics, no oil pouring, no poetry. She jots down your requests on a broken tablet. You pay a deposit in coin and a small sack of almonds. Historians still argue whether dancers were legally free or merely leased human property under contract law. No one agrees. No one really asks. Back at the villa, you arrive just as the cinnamon and cumin are delivered. The merchant is nowhere to be seen, but the bags are sealed. One smells faintly of mold. You sigh. A food prep slave helps you carry everything inside. The kitchen smells of ash and boiled carrots. You place the silk on a cedar bench and drape it carefully. It catches the sunbeam from the clerestory window. It glows. You stand still for a moment, just breathing. Then remember the figs. You forgot the figs. You write it down. You don't panic, not over figs. There's still time. You adjust your belt and head toward the smaller southern gate, where fruit vendors from the countryside sometimes arrive late, their carts tilted from uneven roads. You don't enjoy walking this route. It passes the public latrine, but you need the figs, and the city's elite cannot abide dried ones at a formal gathering. The street narrows between 2 collapsing workshops. Flakes of plaster litter the ground. Above, a laundry line sags with wet tunics dripping onto passers-by. You duck slightly as a low beam crosses overhead, dangerously splintered, supported by sheer will and rope. The smell hits you first. The latrine is near. You pass quickly, eyes averted from the row of squatters seated in casual conversation. One man reads a scroll. Another picks his teeth with a chicken bone. They barely look up. The fruit cart stands beyond them, just outside the walls. Its owner is old, wiry, and barefoot. His cart leans precariously, one wheel sunken into a rut. Piles of produce spill over the edges, grapes, melons, pomegranates. And there, buried under soft straw, are the figs. Fresh, deep purple. Slightly wrinkled at the seams. You pick one up. It gives under your fingers a subtle firmness perfect for slicing stuffing and decoration. You order 2 baskets. The man laughs. He says his donkey died last week and he hauled this cart by hand. He wants extra coin. You toss him a denarius without haggling. He kisses the edge of his fingers and bows. You instruct delivery within an hour. If he's late, the figs will be fed to the pigeons. He swears by Jupiter. As you return through the gate, you make a quick stop. A woman sells incense cones from a folding table. You select 6 2 myrrh, 3 cinnamon, 1 questionable Nile breeze scent she claims was blessed by Egyptian priests. It smells like burnt honey. You buy it anyway. Back at the villa, the kitchen is chaotic. The chef yells at a boy holding a skinned eel. The eel is moving slightly. The boy is not. You skirt the edge of the room and check the supplies. Cumin present. Cinnamon present. Dates slightly soft. Silk untouched. Figs not yet arrived. You walk toward the peristyle, your staging ground. Here birds hop between columns. A gentle breeze ripples the pool in the center, reflecting broken bits of sky. You take a seat on a low marble bench. Your knees crack softly. Across the garden, two servers in training pour imaginary wine into empty cups, mimicking grace. They spill nothing, but one of them trips over his own foot and mutters in Greek. You sigh. It's time to review the checklist again. Tonight's gathering is not technically a feast. It's a convivium, a structured evening of food, drink, and performance arranged in honor of a minor god whose name you've already forgotten. No one cares. The client cares only that there's enough garlands, wine, and discreet areas for private indulgence. You must provide 3 courses each with entertainment, each with appropriate lighting and smells. The courses themselves are already planned. First course: boiled eggs, oysters, lentils, mulled wine, background lyre music. Second course: spiced sausage, baked dormice, peacock stew, dancers with hand drums. Third course: honeyed dates, stuffed figs, almond pastries, storytelling by a blind man with a trained parrot. It's not innovative, but it will satisfy. You add a reminder. Ensure parrot arrives sober. Last time it shrieked obscenities in Greek, halfway through a speech about love. A soft grunt behind you. The fig vendor stands at the gate, his back bent, arms trembling under 2 baskets. You nod once. 2 slaves run to relieve him. He vanishes before you can ask his name. You inspect the figs. They're flawless. You place one on your tongue. It's cool, firm, bursting with sweetness and faint fermentation. You let the taste linger. Just then a courier arrives with a message delivered by a breathless boy with scuffed sandals and a streak of soot across his cheek. He hands you a scroll sealed in red wax. You break it open. It's from your client. They're requesting a special edition, a platter of thrushes baked in spiced wine and arranged in the shape of a pyramid. It must be served by a woman dressed as Venus. You close your eyes. You write it down. Your cook will be furious. Thrushes are hard to catch. Their bones splinter. They overcook quickly. But you know a bird seller near the Tiber who traps them illegally. You'll send someone. For the Venus costume, you'll reuse the gold-dyed robe from last year's Saturnalia party. It smells of onions and mothballs, but under torchlight no one will care. You'll assign the server with the most symmetrical teeth. That usually satisfies appearances. You pause for a breath. A seagull screeches overhead. You wonder if it followed the fig cart from the coast. On your way back inside, you check the main hall. The couches are already arranged in a U shape around the central table. The cushions need fluffing. You make a note. A breeze lifts the edge of a curtain. Dust motes swirl in the sunbeam. One slave sneezes. You say nothing. You notice a small problem: the main torch brackets are crooked. If left that way, wax will drip on the mosaics and possibly onto the guests. You assign a boy to fix them. He doesn't respond. You raise an eyebrow. He runs. Historians still argue whether slaves in Roman society could express independent thought or merely mimic obedience. You suspect the truth is both and neither. You retire briefly to your chamber. The bed is unmade. A cracked mirror leans against the wall, reflecting your tired face. You sit, then lie back. You whisper to no one in particular. Thrushes, figs, silk dancers whine, and the parrot. Your stomach growls. You forgot lunch. Outside, the wind changes direction. A storm might be coming, or it might pass. Either way, you'll light the garden torches early. You close your eyes for 3 breaths, then rise again. There is still more to buy. The bathhouse is a short walk from your villa down 2 alleys, past a pigeon coop, and just beside the marble steps where a vendor sells scrolls of dubious origin. You know the place well. It's not the grand baths of Caracalla. Too far. Too public. Instead, it's a smaller private therme frequented by merchants, retired officials, and those pretending to be both. The entrance is plain, a stone arch carved with Neptune's trident, the details worn smooth by decades of steam and fingers. You step inside and the air changes immediately. Warm, damp, heavy with the scent of old oil-wet limestone and faded lavender. The slave at the door doesn't look up. He scratches his knee and mutters a greeting. You nod and press onward, following the familiar rhythm of splashing water and low conversation. Sandals scrape tile. Someone laughs softly, probably at someone else's expense. The apoditerium, the changing room, is dim, its walls painted with fading frescoes of river gods and floating nymphs. A bench hugs the wall. Bronze pegs stick out like ribs holding scattered tunics and belts. You undress, fold your tunic, and tuck it behind a loose stone in the wall. You don't trust the peg. No one does. You walk naked into the tepidarium, the warm room where heat seeps into your bones through polished floors. A young man hands you a jar of oil. You nod. He bows. You rub the oil across your arms, chest, and neck. It smells faintly of rosemary and old vinegar. Then you sit. The benches here are stone but warm from the underfloor hypocaust system. Clever engineering invented long before you were born. Heat from fires below rises through flues. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it burns feet. Today, it's pleasant. You survey the room. A senator's nephew reclines near the opposite wall, speaking quietly to a wine merchant. His sandals cost more than your monthly budget. You note their presence both invited tonight. Their seating needs adjusting. The nephew dislikes the merchant ever since a shipment of Gallic wine turned to vinegar in transit. Another guest enters. A former military tribune recognizable by the scar over his brow and the way he steps like the floor owes him taxes. He doesn't see you. That's fine. He'll remember you after dessert. You move next into the caldarium, the hot room. Steam clings to every surface. You walk slowly to the edge of the pool, watching condensation drip from the ceiling in slow rhythms. A bearded man sighs somewhere behind you. The scrape of a strigil, a curved bronze scraper, echoes from the far wall. You ease into the water. It hugs your limbs like warm bread dough. Your eyes close instinctively. Muscles soften. For a moment, you forget the figs, the dancers, the parrot. A slave offers to scrape your skin. You agree. He works silently, dragging the strigil down your back, removing oil, sweat, and stress in long, practiced motions. The blade's edge never cuts. His hands never tremble. He collects the residue in a small wooden bowl which he'll later empty into the shared bin. Someone will repurpose it as a salve. probably illegally. There's a superstition that oil scraped from wealthy skin carries luck. You don't believe it, but someone always pays for it. You linger in the heat until your fingers prune. Then you rise slowly and step toward the frigidarium. The cold plunge. You hate it. You stand over the water heart ticking in your chest like a dropped hourglass. The surface ripples faintly, disturbed by nothing and everything. You inhale, step forward, and descend. It hits like punishment. Your skin contracts. Your teeth clench. You sink to your shoulders and remain still. 20 counts. No more, no less. You reach 15 before losing track. At 20, you emerge gasping and renewed like a half-drowned eel. You dry off with a rough cloth. A slave hands you your tunic. It's still warm from the wall. You dress quickly. Before leaving, you stop at the calceus room, the shoe room. You find your sandals, now clean, and slide them on. They creak slightly. The slave beside you nods. You drop a small coin in his bowl. You exit the bathhouse into late morning light. Your hair is damp. Your tunic clings slightly. The city smells sharper now, baking bread, cut stone horses and salt from the fishmonger near the gate. Your skin tingles from the cold plunge. Your eyes feel clearer. You take a short detour. Down an alley beside a faded statue of Ceres sits a scribe's stand. A young man copies scrolls for coin, his fingers stained with ink. You commission him to write a fresh guest list on papyrus. Your wax tablet is messy and hard to read by torchlight. You dictate names slowly. He writes with care, pausing only to dip his reed pen in the inkwell. Halfway through, a breeze knocks over his ink jar. It rolls toward your foot. You catch it. He thanks you. You don't smile. You finish the list, double-check the spelling, and tuck the scroll into your belt. Historians still argue whether most Romans could read beyond shop signs and temple dedications. Scrolls were expensive, but even illiterate guests liked to see their name printed in ink. Back at the villa, a delivery has arrived. 4 crates, one of olive oil, one of lentils, one of red glazed plates, and one containing 6 glass cups, shaped like tiny amphorae. 2 are broken. You shrug. The cook storms past you, waving a chicken. It's alive and angry. He swears loudly about the thrush order which hasn't arrived. You wave him off. You'll deal with the bird seller after lunch. You walk into the triclinium. The couches are aligned. The central table gleams. An oil lamp flickers on the far wall. You sit for a moment alone and place the scroll on the table. You stare at the names. You whisper them aloud. Then you fold the list neatly and hide it under a dish of almonds. The day is moving forward. The city breathes around you. And you, the silent coordinator of excess, keep it all from collapsing into salted chaos. You leave the triclinium through the side door, stepping into a narrow hallway lined with faded frescoes. The paint has chipped in places, sea nymphs now missing arms, dolphins swimming without eyes. You trail your fingers along the wall, the plaster cool and slightly gritty. You pass under a low arch and enter the inner courtyard. The sun now hangs higher in the sky, casting angled shadows through the colonnade. The air is dry. A gust lifts dust across the tiled floor. Somewhere nearby, a cicada starts its rhythmic call. You make your way to the eastern wing where the decorations are being prepared. This section of the villa smells of beeswax paint and powdered chalk. A sculptor works beside a stack of half-finished busts. He wears a gray tunic smeared with red ochre. His hands are white with marble dust. He looks up as you approach. You nod toward the central piece, a statue meant to stand near the entrance greeting guests with symbolic charm and mild shock. It's a depiction of Priapus. You sigh. The proportions are generous, excessive even by Roman standards. His face is cheerful, his posture triumphant. You inspect the base for stability. The marble is real, not painted plaster. You approve. The sculptor smiles proudly and adds the final touch, a small garland of myrtle around the base. Not for modesty, for luck. In Roman homes, these sorts of decorations were common. Not everywhere, of course, but in elite gatherings, especially those meant to blur the line between worship and indulgence, such statues served as symbols of fertility, excess, and a joke everyone could point at while pretending not to laugh. You walk through the corridor where the slaves are hanging amulets and charms. Bundles of garlic tied with red string hang from the eaves. Clay tokens shaped like fish and hands are placed in corners. One boy paints an eye on a square of linen and tacks it over the entry to the triclinium. Another sprinkles salt under the threshold. They do this not because it's required, but because no one wants to be blamed if something goes wrong. A guest chokes. That's an evil spirit. A lamp goes out. Bad omen. The only way to prevent bad luck is to saturate the space with tiny layers of folk insurance. One elderly woman places a small clay figure of Venus under a cushion. No one asked her to. You leave her alone. You enter the fragrance room, a small storage chamber near the kitchen. Inside, 4 boys are grinding ingredients with stone mortars, myrrh, cedar resin, crushed petals, sandalwood, and burnt bark. One sneezes. On a nearby shelf sit 10 amphorae labeled in crude Latin. Sea breeze temple scent, evening spice goat in summer. That one's a mistake. You pick one at random and uncork it. The scent is strong floral, heavy with a hint of citrus. You nod. They will smear these oils on table legs, cushion edges, and wall niches. Just enough for a lingering impression. Not enough to offend. You check your list again. You've accounted for the main fragrances, but you remember a fringe request from one of the guests, a senator who believes the scent of juniper wards off stomach illness. You look around. No juniper. You dispatch a runner. You step into the atrium again. A slave is polishing the floor tiles with wool cloth and vinegar. The scent stings your nose, but the tiles gleam. At the far end of the hall, a man enters through the front door. He's in his 60s with a thick beard and a walking stick carved with lions. You know him, Marcus Annius Flaccus, your uncle. Not by blood, but by tradition. He once helped your father settle a property dispute over a vineyard and now claims kinship. He shows up at your events uninvited, but always brings money. He waves. You don't wave back. You walk toward him slowly. He raises a wineskin in greeting. It sloshes audibly. His eyes are wet, not with drink yet, but with preemptive nostalgia. He claps you on the back. You don't stagger. Planning another hedonistic disaster, I see, he says. You nod. He smiles. He asks about the dancers. You lie and say they're modest. He asks about the wine. You tell him it's potent but refined. He asks about the entertainment. You change the subject. He pulls out a small pouch of coins and tosses it to you. It lands heavily in your palm. You nod your thanks. He leans in and whispers, "I still miss the Republic." You don't reply. He sits on a bench in the atrium and drinks from his wineskin. His shoes leave dust prints on the polished tile. He'll have to clean again. He hums a slow tune, something about Cato and olives. You leave him to it. Historians still argue whether elite Roman families maintained genuine affection for the old republic, or simply used the memory of it to sound respectable while enjoying empire perks. With Flaccus, it hardly matters. He misses a version of Rome that never quite existed. You return to the decorations. The staff is now arranging painted panels along the hallway scenes of Venus rising from the sea, Bacchus reclining in vineyards, satyrs frolicking without shame. The colors are vivid lapis blue vermilion, red leaf, green. A girl glues small glass beads into the corners of the frames to catch torchlight. Her fingers are stained with paste. Her brow furrows in concentration. You pass behind her silently. In the triclinium, the final garlands arrive woven roses, woven laurel, woven wheat stalks. You arrange them in loops over the dining couches, letting them hang just enough to brush the necks of seated guests. The sun has shifted again. You step outside briefly to check the sky. It's still clear. No sign of storm. You squint. A bird circles overhead, a hawk maybe. You take it as a good sign, though you'll say otherwise if asked. As you head back inside, a young boy meets you in the hall. He's pale and barefoot. He carries a sealed message tablet. You crack it open. It's from the senator's wife. She insists on arriving through the back entrance to avoid gossip. She also demands a separate couch away from her husband. You mark her position on the seating plan and assign her a view of the sculpture. That should distract her. You pause beside the statue of Priapus again. A single fig rests at its base. No one knows who put it there. You say nothing. The day is advancing, and so are your problems. You take a sip of watered wine in the courtyard when a breathless errand boy stumbles through the side gate. His tunic is half untucked, one sandal flopping behind him like a loose flap of fish skin. He wipes sweat from his brow and mutters 3 dreaded words. Panther rental canceled. You don't respond right away. He continues, eyes wide, voice hoarse from running. The animal handler backed out. Apparently his last show ended poorly. A magistrate's daughter got too close to the panther's cage. The cat lunged. Her sandal disappeared. She did not. The handler's license was revoked. You close your eyes. You had promised a grand spectacle, a moment of awe, something primal to end the second course. The client specifically requested danger wrapped in fur, and now you have neither. You begin walking. The boy follows. You stop at the storage room near the outer wall. Here, crates of props and emergency furnishings gather dust. You unlock the iron latch and enter. The air is thick with cedar cobwebs and something you suspect was once a melon. In the corner stands a wooden donkey, painted white, one ear broken, red ribbons tied to its tail. You pull it into the light. Its eyes are glass. Its belly is hollow. It was once part of a children's parade float. It will have to do. You instruct 2 boys to clean it, polish it, and insert aromatic herbs into its hollow frame to mask the smell of mildew. One of them sneezes violently. You hand him a cloth. Next, you consider alternatives. Something with flair. A flute player. You remember a short man who performs near the Temple of Mercury. He balances on a barrel while playing 2 flutes at once through his nose. You scribble his name Clodius onto your tablet and send a boy to fetch him. If he's sober, he'll agree. A painted donkey and a nose flute solo. Not quite a panther, but manageable. You re-enter the villa and pass through the dining hall. A tall vase now stands by the fountain, filled with lily stems and branches of laurel. Their fragrance is sharp. You adjust the tallest branch, turning its broken side away from view. You check the entertainment scroll. Your scheduled performers include 2 dancers, 1 parrot handler, a blind storyteller, the senatorial poet, and until moments ago a panther. You scratch out the last name with your stylus. The poet is a liability, but the client insisted. He speaks slowly. Too slowly. Last time a guest fell asleep mid-sonnet and snored through the final verse. You'll position him between dessert and wine when everyone's too content to complain. Just then the flute player arrives. He's shorter than you remember. His robe is stained and one eye twitches every few seconds. He bows deeply, trips over his own foot, and steadies himself with a dramatic pose. You nod once. He unrolls a cloth and reveals his instruments, 2 bone flutes polished and curved, and a smaller reed pipe that you don't recognize. He begins to play. The sound is shrill, hypnotic, and oddly rhythmic. A nearby servant drops a tray. You raise a hand. The music stops. You tell him to return at dusk, dressed in neutral colors. No acrobatics, no shouting, no animals. He agrees solemnly. You walk to the kitchen. The cook is covered in flour. A chicken feather sticks to his cheek. He holds up a tray of half-prepared pastries, figs stuffed with almond paste and topped with honeyed rose petals. He gestures toward the oven. It's smoking, not from heat, from a trapped bird. You don't ask. He mentions the thrushes have arrived, barely alive, packed in a basket, squawking and soiled. He says they smell like vinegar and fear. He plans to roast them with wine garlic and a fig glaze. You approve. He also reports a shortage of mint. You frown. He suggests a substitution crushed bay leaf. You disagree. You send for mint. In the courtyard, a pair of decorators argue over curtain placement. One insists on symmetry. The other believes in movement. You silence them both and position the fabric yourself, draped over the arch, one edge pinned with a bronze brooch shaped like a winged boar. It looks ridiculous. It stays. You pass a boy polishing bronze platters with a mixture of vinegar and crushed eggshell. His elbows shine with effort. You correct his grip. He nods. At the side door, a man arrives with an ostrich feather fan. He's missing 3 teeth and 1 sandal. He hands over the fan with great ceremony. It's taller than a man made of 7 white feathers bound in silver thread. You hand him a coin and assign the fan to the entrance. Guests will be fanned as they pass. It's purely for effect. The breeze is barely noticeable, but the feathers whisper against the air, suggesting luxury. Historians still argue whether feathered fans were purely ceremonial or served an actual cooling function in elite homes. Some believe they were symbols of status borrowed from Egypt. Others argue they were simply mosquito deterrents. You suspect they were both, and neither depending on who was watching. You make your way to the rear garden. Here the dancers rehearse. The girl moves slowly, arms tracing arcs in the air. The two boys circle her, stepping in rhythm, bare feet brushing against gravel. You observe silently. Their timing is off. You clap once. They freeze. You correct a turn. The girl nods. One boy blinks rapidly. The other stares at the sky. You assign them new music, soft drum, slow tempo, no wind instruments. You inspect the torch brackets. They're secure. The citronella pots are filled to keep insects at bay. The floor is swept. You adjust a stool near the fig tree. It wobbles. You stuff a pebble beneath one leg. You return indoors. The donkey now stands proudly in the main hall, polished and perfumed. A garland of rosemary encircles its neck. You nod. It is a strange substitution, but it will serve. Midday draws near, and the air hangs heavier now. Somewhere outside the villa walls, a chariot rattles over stones. Inside, everything is still in motion. You're moving faster than before, not by choice, but necessity. One wrong detail could unravel the evening. You move through the atrium with focus, sweat prickling at the back of your neck. You turn sharply down a hallway flanked by faded murals of victorious gods and dying gladiators. You reach a small side chamber reserved for formal blessings, unused for months, and damp with forgotten incense ash. It's time for your brief meeting with the religious officials. Not by piety, by obligation. 3 Vestal virgins wait for you. They are young, silent, draped in snow-white stolas that brush the stone floor. Behind them stands an older woman, their attendant wrapped in heavier fabric. Her mouth is drawn tight. Her eyes track every movement. You bow slightly, careful not to appear dismissive. You welcome them to the villa. You explain in vague, respectful language the purpose of tonight's gathering. They do not blink. They know. Everyone knows. But it must be said in the right words. You request a ritual blessing. Symbolic, brief, nothing too theatrical. A gesture that satisfies the gods without disrupting the wine schedule. The eldest Vestal steps forward, produces a clay tablet with pre-written prayers, and nods once. You indicate the space in the garden where they may perform it. Quietly, discreetly. One of the younger Vestals glances at the donkey statue in the hall. You see the corner of her mouth twitch upward. You say nothing. In ancient Rome, religion was everywhere and nowhere. Every public act came with ritual. Every private indulgence wore a veil of reverence. The Vestals maintained Rome's spiritual stability, but their presence here is strictly legal. A permit for indulgence dressed in sacred white. Historians still argue whether these gestures held any spiritual weight among the elite, or simply served as formal protection, like locking the door but leaving the window open. You suspect their insurance against gossip more than divine wrath. You escort the Vestals back to the vestibule. They will return before sunset. You thank them again. Then you wash your hands in the garden basin. Twice, out of habit. A breeze rolls in from the west. You hear the faint jingle of bells. The wine merchant has arrived. He's short, broad-shouldered, and smells like vinegar. Behind him, 2 assistants roll in large amphorae on wooden carts. The vessels are sealed with wax and cloth. You inspect each one. 5 are labeled Falernian, sweet-aged, light-bodied, Kekuben, darker, drier, heavier, mulsum, wine mixed with honey, rosatum, wine infused with rose petals, Syracusan, strong, spicy, probably over-fermented. You uncork the Falernian. Sniff, slightly nutty, acceptable. You uncork the Syracusan. It fizzes. You close it quickly. It will be served in small doses. You ask about poison testing. He nods toward a girl standing nearby. She's pale, silent, and already holding a silver spoon. She tastes each wine in turn. You wait. She remains upright. You nod. Poison testers have a thankless role. They rarely die. Not because the wine is always clean, but because the dosage needed to kill is often expensive. Most who poison do so to embarrass, not murder. You assign a staff member to mix the mulsum, equal parts honey and wine, stirred, not boiled, served in bronze cups with almond dust. Sweetness dulls suspicion. You'll offer it early. Next, the servers begin practicing their movements. 12 of them, all young, tunics clean, sandals matching. You pair them in teams. One pours, one carries trays. They rehearse in the garden, walking slow arcs around the fig tree, dipping as they turn, whispering the names of imaginary guests. You observe. One girl smiles too much. One boy walks with his elbows out. You adjust posture, expression, pace. You correct a plate grip. You reposition a wrist. Your voice remains calm. These are small things. But small things become large when spilled across an expensive guest. In the main corridor, 2 slaves roll out the dinner couches. Low-angled, padded with goose feather cushions, dyed in dull maroon. The client requested more lounging than sitting. You comply. You align the couches in a crescent, leaving gaps for torch stands and serving lanes. You check the ceiling. Ropes have been secured for the hanging lanterns. Oil pots are ready. No candles too fragile. The last time wax dripped onto a senator's bald head, he tried to declare war on the theater. In a nearby chamber, the musicians arrive. 3 of them. 2 lyre players, one with a tambourine. They bow in unison. You hand them the set list written in thick charcoal on linen. Background only. No vocals during the second course. Emphasis on slow rhythm, not tempo. Pause between pieces. One of them asks for extra wine. You say no. You return to the courtyard. Someone has placed fresh rose petals in the fountain. They drift across the water, lazily brushing the marble edges. A child tries to catch one with a stick. You stop him with a glance. A cart creaks at the gate. You approach. Inside, 3 crates of crockery, painted bowls, red slipware plates, stamped jugs. You unpack each one carefully. 3 are chipped. 2 have hairline cracks. You set those aside for lower-tier guests. You rub your thumb across one bowl's design, Achilles chasing Hector around Troy. You wonder who painted it. Probably a factory workshop in southern Italy. Mass-produced for domestic fantasy. You take one more walk around the property. You check every lantern. You straighten every curtain. You retighten one rope. You tap each amphora to hear its echo. You smooth the cloth on each couch. Each corner turned precisely, each cushion dented lightly in the middle to suggest softness. Everything is ready. Almost. You check your wax tablet again. A final name is missing. The astrologer. You forgot the astrologer. You curse under your breath, then snap your fingers. A boy runs. You whisper instructions. Find Cassianus. Temple district. Short man. Gold earring. Smells like burnt sage. Tell him we need a fertility reading. Paid in advance. He nods. He runs. You rub your temples. No one will ask what the stars say, but they'll feel cheated if no one says them. You stand still for a moment in the peristyle, one hand resting on a warm marble column. The air is heavier now, thicker with scent, with sound, with something else you can't quite name. You close your eyes, then open them again. It's time to prepare the servers. You walk toward the rear storeroom where 10 young men and women stand in loose rows whispering nervously. Their tunics are new, freshly dyed in pale saffron. Each wears a leather belt. Their feet are bare by instruction, soundless steps, easier corrections. The girl with the silver bracelet shifts her weight from one heel to the other. The boy with the bent nose stares down at his tray. You step forward, unrolling a scroll. It's their final lesson. They must memorize the serving order, who eats first, who drinks when, and who is likely to complain loudly if their fig pastry is underfilled. You dictate names, couch assignments, specific instructions. Senator Lucullus prefers his molesome warm. Lady Drusilla will request extra cushions. Do not wait to be asked. Do not hand anything directly to the poet. Place it on the tray bow and leave. You pace slowly as you speak. They listen. One girl raises a hand. What if someone asks for more bread? You pause. You say nothing. Then you write on the wall with a piece of charcoal. If they ask for more bread, they are testing you. They nod. You move to the fig tray handoff demonstration. 2 servers step forward. One holds the silver platter, the other the small tongs. The figs must be arranged in a specific spiral, lighter ones on the inside, darker toward the edge. The guest should see this without realizing it's been planned. The tong handoff must be silent. No metal clicks. You make them repeat it until the rhythm is invisible. You move to wine pouring. The amphora is heavy. It must rest against the hip. One arm supports. One hand steadies. The angle is precise. You tilt slowly, then return the vessel upright in a single motion. You assign the tallest server to this role. She's steady. Her wrists are like rope. One of the boys is visibly sweating. You hand him a cloth. You explain the guest interactions. If a guest speaks, pause, nod, bow slightly. Do not answer unless asked a question. If asked a question, answer briefly. Avoid opinion. If insulted, smile and wait for the guest to lose interest. If touched, do not flinch. If summoned mid-tray, complete your pass, then approach. Never run, never shout. You inspect their feet. Clean. You inspect their nails. Short. You inspect their posture. Not perfect, but good enough. You hand out small sachets of ground bay leaf and lavender. They tuck them into their belts. Not for luck, for scent. When they walk, the herbs will release faint perfume into the air. Roman elites expect their evenings to smell like money. You dismiss them for now. In the next room, 2 boys polish silver plates with sheep's wool dipped in vinegar. One of them hums. You silence him. The noise of preparation swells around you, footsteps on mosaic. the slosh of water poured into basins, the creak of carts turning in narrow halls. Outside, a dog barks. A vendor's bell rings. Inside, a rhythm builds. Rehearsed, predictable, controlled. You move to the triclinium. The cushions are in place. The walls are draped with soft red and gold cloth. The ceiling has been brushed clean of cobwebs. In the far corner, a harp leans against the wall, silent for now. You test the lighting. A torch is too dim. You swap the oil pot. A lantern flickers. You relight it with a strip of wax-dipped linen. You walk the entire perimeter. You stoop to adjust a fallen garland. You lift a tray to inspect the fig pattern again. Everything, for a moment, is acceptable. Then you hear it. Voices. At the gate. You move quickly to the vestibule. A delegation has arrived. Not the guests. The ones who clear the way for guests. Messengers, assistants, watchers. One carries a rolled-up scroll sealed in blue wax. Another holds a box of jewelry, no doubt for the senator's mistress, who insisted her bangles be cooled in water before wearing. You greet them. They do not bow. They hand you the scroll. You open it. Inside, a revised seating arrangement. 2 guests have switched places. 1 added, 1 removed. You bite the inside of your cheek. You nod. You adjust. You thank them. They don't reply. They vanish. Back inside, you update the couch tags. Small strips of parchment marked with names in sharp charcoal lines. You reposition the names, reassign a wine server, recalculate cushion distribution. In the kitchen, the cook calls out. He holds a tray of roasted thrushes arranged pyramid style just as requested. Their skins glisten with wine glaze. One bird has collapsed inward. He replaces it. The server, dressed as Venus, stands nearby. She wears the gold robe. She smells like roses and onions. Her eyes do not blink. You instruct her to walk slowly, stop 3 paces from the host, hold the tray above her head for exactly 5 seconds, then bow. She practices once. She's perfect. You look to the garden. The sun has begun its descent. The angle of light sharpens, casting long shadows across the villa floor. A bird lands on the edge of the fountain. A petal drifts past it. Time begins to compress. You retrieve the astrologer's mat. You place it in the garden beside the fig tree. A small bronze bowl sits at its center. You fill it with water. A candle beside it. A star map beside that. Cassianus has not arrived. You assign a boy to watch the gate. In the meantime, you set out the divination tokens, small carved stones with planetary symbols. One by one, in order. Saturn, Venus, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter. The crowd won't know what they mean, but they'll feel reassured when someone chants their names. Historians still argue whether astrology held any scientific merit in Roman society, or whether it was merely an elaborate form of theater. Some emperors believed it completely. Others executed their astrologers when the predictions went wrong. You just need someone to murmur convincingly. You walk back through the hallway. A server bows as you pass. You nod. The light dims further. The wine cools. The flutes are silent. The donkey stands ready, painted, flowered, ridiculous. Everything is in place. You've trained the servers. You've matched the trays. You've placed every candle and cushion. The guests are on their way. You exhale. The shadows have stretched long across the stone floors. Outside the villa, the sounds have changed. Hoofbeats, uneven footsteps, wheels bumping across stone polite greetings that grow quieter just before the knock. The guests are arriving. You station yourself near the inner gate, not at the door, like a slave, not hidden, like a coward, but somewhere in between. You wear your second-best tunic, the one with the darker hem. It hides wine spills better. A servant adjusts the fold at your shoulder without a word. You let them. The first guest enters. A merchant from Ostia. He smells of cedar oil and ambition. You greet him by name. He nods, already surveying the room, mentally cataloging the other attendees. He hands his sandals to the slave at the threshold and slides on the provided indoor slippers, felt-bottomed, silent. His cloak is removed and folded. He disappears into the peristyle. One by one they arrive. A senator in a red-striped toga who clears his throat every 12 seconds. A poet's patron trailing rose petals like crumbs. A general's widow in blue linen so stiff it creaks. You guide each one through the entrance path past the statue of Priapus, now draped with a ceremonial sash, and into the reception chamber. No one mentions the donkey. They glance. They smirk. They move on. A messenger appears beside you, whispering. Cassianus is at the gate. You exhale. The astrologer walks in, wrapped in a robe dyed storm gray. His sandals are mismatched. His left eye twitches. He carries a scroll, a brass bowl, and a bundle of dried herbs tied with black string. You lead him to the garden mat where the candle still burns. He nods once, then sits cross-legged and begins muttering to the stars, even though the sky isn't yet visible. You return inside. The server, dressed as Venus, practices one last time. Her tray now holds the roasted thrush pyramid. You inspect the birds, each arranged with the heads turned inward, wings, outstretched eyes closed in a sort of edible serenity. You adjust the central garnish, a cluster of grapes shaped like a heart. More guests arrive. You hear voices behind the curtain. 2 senators, a widow, someone with a flute case. One laughs too loudly. One complains about the cushion height. One asks if the oysters are local. You answer yes, even though they came from a cart packed with seaweed and melted ice. The triclinium is almost full. You check the seating chart one last time. Every name has its couch. Every guest their cushion. Every server their route. The musicians begin to play. A slow ambient melody from the lyres. No singing yet. No applause. Just a ripple of sound to quiet the nerves. The host arrives. Late as expected. Dressed in pale linen with gold edging. Rings on every finger. Perfume thick enough to be tasted. You bow slightly. He doesn't notice. He walks straight to the head couch and reclines with practiced ease. You give the signal. The doors are closed. The evening begins. First, the servers enter 2 by 2, carrying trays of boiled eggs, oysters on vine leaves, and small bowls of lentil mash seasoned with vinegar and cumin. The plates clink gently as they're placed. The guests murmur approvals. One asks if the oysters are aphrodisiac grade. You nod again. Wine is poured. Falernian, slightly warmed, stirred with honey, served in shallow bronze cups. You watch carefully. No spills, no overpours. The servers move like practiced shadows. Even the one with the nervous elbow walks straight now. Midway through the first course, the poet begins. He stands near the eastern arch, framed by a hanging lantern and a tall vase of lilies. His voice is dry but steady. The poem is long winding about love lost in the countryside. No one listens closely, but everyone pretends. That's all that's required. Someone sneezes. Someone yawns. You adjust a lamp wick. At the end of the first course, bowls are cleared. Fingers are wiped with rosewater cloths. Cushions are fluffed. One senator demands extra oil for his hands. A boy complies. You keep a mental note of every unusual request. Next, the musicians shift to a faster rhythm. It's time for the second course. The dancers enter. 2 boys, 1 girl, barefoot, draped in sheer fabric that shimmers in torchlight. They move in slow arcs, circling one another. Their hands trace symbols in the air: Venus, Saturn, Mars. The girl pauses near the fountain, then twirls, releasing a spray of rose petals from a hidden pouch. Guests watch. Some smile. One claps too early. Meanwhile, servers bring in the meats. Spiced sausage cut in spirals, baked dormice on small skewers, slices of peacock thigh with pomegranate sauce. Everything smells rich, heavy, carefully overwhelming. Wine is poured again this time, the succuban drier, meant to contrast the sweetness. The server, in the Venus robe, enters. She walks with perfect balance. The tray is high. The birds shimmer. The guests lean in. She stops. She lowers the tray. She bows. A round of applause. The general's widow asks for the recipe. The merchant from Ostia whispers something about divine symbols. You exhale quietly. Then comes the unexpected. The donkey, until now, stationary, is rolled forward on a cart. A flute begins to play the nasal sound of Clodius's double pipe. He twirls, steps backward, lifts 1 foot theatrically. The donkey's eyes flash in the torchlight. The crowd laughs. It's working. One guest asks if the donkey is symbolic. You say yes. He doesn't ask what it symbolizes. You pour another round of Mulsum syrupy, dense, sticky with honey and date sugar. The guests drink slower now. Their bodies relax. Voices soften. Someone begins humming along with the lyres. The blind storyteller appears at the edge of the garden. He begins to speak. His voice is deep, rhythmic, hypnotic. The parrot on his shoulder mimics the final word of every sentence. Some guests think it's planned. Some don't. Either way, no one moves. The parrot repeats lust, trust, dust. The final word is feast. You almost smile. In the corner of the garden, Cassianus announces that Venus and Mars are aligned. Fertility is high. Fortune is favorable. One senator nods vigorously and asks for more peacock. The dancers return for one final movement. This time they move slower. The music fades to a whisper. One guest falls asleep. Another belches softly. You walk the edge of the triclinium, inspecting. The candles are stable. The wine jugs half empty. The food nearly gone. You look up at the sky through the open ceiling. The stars are beginning to show. You take a deep breath. You made it. The sky is now a deepening indigo, and a thin band of orange clings stubbornly to the horizon, soon to vanish. Inside the villa, torchlight grows dominant. Shadows stretch longer. The temperature has dropped slightly, and you can hear the crisp crackle of oil as flames hiss gently atop their brackets. From your position near the main hall, you see them every guest in some degree of descent. Their spines curve more deeply into cushions. Their voices have shifted from deliberate posturing to low, loose rhythms. They're halfway to abandon, right on schedule. You hear the familiar shuffle of uneven steps. Uncle Flaccus returns from the courtyard, his wine cup sloshing his tunic, now draped over only one shoulder. His beard glistens with something that might be oil or syrup. He sits without invitation on the edge of the host's couch, delivering a riddle about pigs and fate that no one understands, and no one dares correct. You intercept a servant and whisper a command, deliver a fresh cup of water to Flaccus disguised with a lemon rind. He doesn't need more wine. He just thinks he does. He hiccups, then blesses the feast. A few guests laugh. One tries to raise a toast but forgets who the toast is for and lifts his goblet toward a statue. The donkey, for its part, remains still, its painted eyes locked on the room like an eternal spectator. A loose garland now drapes one ear. You leave it. You notice a minor emergency. A bowl of candied dates has collapsed onto a velvet throw. A dark syrup stain spreads across the maroon fabric like slow ink. A servant is frozen in place, cloth in hand, eyes wide. You walk over, press down with the dry part of the fabric, then twist and lift. The stain lessens, not gone but manageable. You instruct the servant to rotate the cushion. No one will notice. This is what you do now. You orbit. You are the invisible planet of the feast, seen only in the eclipses of error. The musicians strike a softer chord. Someone starts reciting a proverb about Jupiter and wheat. Another guest corrects him and claims it was about Neptune and barley. The debate lasts 4 sentences and ends with a mouthful of almond cake. The general's widow rises slightly from her couch. She signals discreetly to a server. You watch the exchange. She whispers. The server nods. A moment later, a smaller, more cushioned stool is brought to her side. She rests her feet on it. You nod approval. The server notices. Elsewhere, a senator removes his sandals and leans against his companion, who is chewing slowly through her 5th grape. She offers one to him. He misses and bites her finger. She laughs and hits him with a fig leaf. A corner couch remains quiet. There 3 men recline with minimal motion. One sips, one stares at the ceiling, and one twirls a spoon. They're not bored. They're observing. You note them potential patrons, possible sponsors, or simply curious men deciding whether to invest in next season's entertainments. You send them a small tray, olives, nuts, and a single cup of rosatum. One raises an eyebrow. The others nod. It's a signal. They're engaged now. You return to the vestibule briefly to inspect incoming trays. The kitchen has shifted to cleanup mode. Cooks scrub pots with salt and sand. A boy carries broken goblets in a sack. The parrot handler leans against the wall, feeding the bird a crushed fig. It repeats the phrase, "More bread, please," and burps. The storyteller has disappeared, probably asleep under a bench. You return to the garden to check on Cassianus. He's flat on his back, eyes open, staring at the stars. His scroll lies beside him, half unrolled. You crouch and ask if everything is in alignment. He says yes, then adds, "In several ways." You leave him. In the side chamber, the final food course is being prepped. Desserts, honeyed nuts, fig pastries, sesame wafers, and small almond rounds dusted with powdered sugar. You sample one. It sticks to the roof of your mouth. Perfect. You prepare the servers for this last round. Smaller trays, slower movements. Guests will be reclining now, more horizontal than vertical. You caution against reaching. Let the food come to them, not the other way around. The first tray enters. Guests cheer quietly. Someone claps once, then stops. The harp begins a slow, repeating phrase. The candlelight flickers. At the central couch, the host waves his hand and announces that Jupiter would approve. No one responds. Everyone assumes someone else will. You check the wine. The Syracusan is almost gone. You count the amphorae. The math works out. One more round before water replaces wine. You prepare for this substitution carefully. The water jugs are painted in the same color as the wine jars. The cups are refilled when empty. No announcement. Guests who notice will say nothing. Those who don't will sleep better. A cushion falls. Someone drops a fig. A goblet rolls under the couch. You fix none of these. This is the phase where things collapse. It is not failure. It is expected. The donkey tilts slightly on its wheels. Uncle Flaccus begins a slow chant in Old Latin, something about Saturn's beard and a field of turnips. It rhymes poorly. No one listens. A guest requests music from the left-hand lyre, a term that means nothing. The musician plays a new tune. The guest smiles. The hostess's niece starts crying. No one knows why. She's handed a cup of warm water and a sugar cube. She smiles again. It ends there. You make one last walk through the garden path. The torches burn low. The stars are out. A cool breeze carries in from the west. The astrologer is asleep. The musicians are yawning between chords. The final cups are being emptied. The guests, by degrees, begin to settle. Some recline fully. Some lean against each other. Some stare into the middle distance, chewing slowly and blinking less often. This is the peak, not of joy, not of chaos, but of release. The moon is up now, and its light glances off the rooftops beyond the courtyard walls. Inside the villa, the atmosphere has settled into a kind of warm stupor. The flickering torches create layered shadows on the walls like painted figures, gently swaying with unseen rhythm. You step quietly through the side hallway, avoiding the looser floor tiles that shift underfoot. In the storeroom by the peristyle, the final shipment has arrived. More cushions. You instructed them to come earlier, but shipping things by mule from the next province is always a gamble. You peel back the linen cover and inspect the stack thick dyed in deep indigo, some stitched with geometric patterns. The goose feathers are dense, no lumps. You give one a test press with your hand. It hisses softly and regains shape. Acceptable. Two boys haul them to the triclinium while you trail behind watching. A few guests have shifted positions. One man has slid partially off his couch, now resting on one elbow, in a position neither dignified nor clearly intentional. A servant helps prop him upright and slides a new cushion behind him. You replace 4 more, one under the poet's patron, who now reclines with an empty cup and 1 foot hanging over the edge of the couch. 2 under the general's widow, who demands to float more. 1 beneath the youngest senator's aide, whose pale complexion suggests he underestimated the Syracusan wine. With the cushions in place, the visual balance of the room returns. Colors, proportions, and angles. You take a breath. Guests rarely notice when things are aligned, but they always sense when they're not. You turn to the musicians. One of them has stopped playing. He's massaging his fingers. You hand him a small cup of warm water laced with mint. He nods without speaking and resumes his strumming, slow, steady, repetitive. You give him a slight upward motion of your hand, quieter. You stand near the entrance, taking in the full view. The couches curve gently around the central table. The light from the hanging lanterns softens the corners of the room. Guests murmur, now voices lowered. Someone chuckles once, then falls silent. A new scent wafts through the air. It's the oil you chose, ground myrrh, cedar resin, and sandalwood now warmed by the bodies and heat. It settles into the fabrics, the skin, the air itself. You know it will cling to these walls for days. Some guests may not even notice it consciously, but they'll carry it home in their cloaks. A staff member quietly refills the incense bowl by the arch. The smoke curls upward, and to the left caught by a subtle draft in the architecture. You observe its direction, satisfied that it's not blowing toward the food. In the corner, one of the younger guests reclines with his eyes closed. A girl near him touches his wrist to check whether he's asleep. He opens one eye and smiles. She looks away. You pass through the corridor again, where a low bench now holds the remaining cushions and draperies. A slave folds the used linens, sorting those that are soiled beyond reuse. You nod approval. In the vestibule, a young boy approaches with a small wooden box. He explains that it contains scented oil for final guest hand washings. You open it. The scent is sweet rose water mixed with thyme. You approve. 2 bowls are prepared, one for men, one for women. A clean linen cloth is draped beside each. You station a boy beside them. As the feast continues, the servers begin preparing the final pass. You quietly instruct the 2 best-trained ones to offer water gently without suggestion. Let guests assume it's wine. Let them discover the difference without embarrassment. One guest, an older man with a limp, requests his sandals. He mutters something about dawn and Senate hours. A slave retrieves his shoes. He does not leave. He simply holds them in his lap, stroking the leather with 2 fingers. Another guest requests to speak to the donkey. You give permission. The guest walks up, stares into its eyes and nods, then returns to his couch and announces that the donkey approves. No one reacts. That is the correct response. In the corner, someone sneezes. You send a cloth. They wave it off. The temperature in the villa is dropping slightly. You can feel it in your hands. The thick walls have begun to radiate back the heat they stored all day, but the draft under the western eaves is real. You send a runner for more oil to reinforce the torches. In the kitchen, the staff is winding down. The ovens are being cleaned. The amphorae have been resealed. The counters scrubbed with vinegar and straw. A single rat darts across the far wall. One of the cooks throws a wooden spoon. The rat vanishes. The fig pastries have all been eaten. Only crumbs remain. The cook shows you a clay bowl of leftover stuffing, almond honey pepper, and ground dates. You consider saving it, then shake your head. He eats a spoonful. You pretend not to see. You return to the garden. Cassianus is gone. His mat lies empty. The bowl of water is undisturbed. The candle still burns its wick, almost spent. Beside the bowl is a stone flat and square etched with a single symbol, Jupiter's mark. You pocket it. You'll return it tomorrow. In the sky above, stars now dominate, a full arc visible through the open roof of the peristyle. The Big Dipper, Mars faintly red near the horizon. You hear a snore. Back in the triclinium, two guests are asleep, one snoring, one gently whistling through their nose. You walk quietly past them. The host is upright, barely his cup resting on his stomach. He raises it and offers a vague gesture of gratitude. You nod. A server approaches with the final cloths, one for each guest to clean their fingers and lips. You distribute them slowly, personally, beginning with the most senior guests and moving in a gentle spiral. They wipe hands, mouths, and drop the cloths to the tray with varying degrees of coordination. You give the signal. The music fades. The light is lowered, and the feast begins its final breath. The torches are now low. The flames flicker against cooling walls, and the scent in the air has shifted from food and fig to lamp oil and the faint sweetness of spent perfume. You walk slowly through the triclinium, keeping to the edges, watching everything with detached calm. This is the quiet part. The part most guests will not remember clearly. It's your job to make sure they don't have to. You pause beside the center couch. The host has dozed off, his fingers still curled around the stem of a bronze cup. His chest rises and falls in slow rhythm. A tiny thread of drool traces his lower lip. You cover it with a napkin. The musicians have stopped playing. Their instruments rest at their sides. One adjusts a string absently. Another rolls his shoulder. You nod to them. They pack silently and head toward the garden gate. You make a slow circle around the guests. The general's widow is fully reclined now, her sandals kicked beneath the couch, a cushion pulled over her stomach. Her companion is recounting a dream about bees and inheritance. No one is listening. She's asleep. He keeps talking. You pass Uncle Flaccus, who is sitting cross-legged in front of the donkey statue, whispering what sounds like a legal argument to its hooves. A servant offers to escort him to a bedchamber. You shake your head. He's fine there. In the west corner, the senator's aide is being gently propped up by two servers. He does not respond. His cup is empty. His eyes half shut. You point to the vestibule. They carry him out. At the foot of the garden steps, the astrologer's mat remains abandoned. A dog now sleeps on it, small, gray, and unfamiliar. You choose not to remove it. You step into the kitchen briefly. The heat is nearly gone. The ovens glow faintly. A single cook remains scrubbing a copper pot with a mix of sand and stale wine. You give him a wrapped fig pastry, one of the few reserved for staff. He doesn't speak. He nods and continues scrubbing. You return to the main room. The donkey has tilted slightly again. One wheel is stuck in a groove in the stone. You leave it. No one will notice until morning. You move to the outer hallway where a few guests begin to collect their cloaks and sandals. A servant hands out damp cloths and small copper bowls of mint water. One guest drinks it. That was not the intended use. You say nothing. A merchant from Ephesus requests a scroll. You hand him one, a blank one, and he seems pleased. He tucks it into his belt like a contract. Another guest asks about the flute player. You explain he left early. They nod, solemn. Then forget what they asked. The general's widow stirs, asks if anyone found her ring. You crouch beside her couch and retrieve it from beneath a fig leaf. She nods and presses your hand with surprising strength. You check the floor again. Crumbs, rose petals, oil drips, a broken toothpick, a single slipper. You instruct the servants to begin collecting the obvious debris, but to avoid sweeping until morning. The sound would be too loud, too sharp. Let the mess sleep beside the guests for now. You take one final inventory. Wine mostly gone. Food devoured or spoiled. Cushions displaced. Music silent. Guests some upright, some reclined, one curled under a table. You exhale long and steady. You make your way back to the vestibule where the courtyard breeze carries the scent of burnt oil and jasmine. The moon is high. The air feels still. A servant approaches with a folded tunic. You realize it's yours. The one you wore this morning. It smells like smoke and vinegar. You take it, fold it again, and place it under your arm. In the eastern hall, the girl who played Venus now sleeps on a bench, her gold robe pulled up around her knees. Her tray rests nearby, empty, polished, slightly dented. You note the dent. You'll fix it tomorrow. You pass the statue again. The garland has fallen. It now loops around the base, wilted. Someone has placed a silver ring on its toe. You leave it. Historians still argue whether post-feast rituals had meaning or if they were just improvisations of guests too tired to leave and too drunk to stay. You've seen both. Tonight it leans toward improvisation. In the garden, the final torch sputters. You let it die. The stars above are clear. The roof opening frames a piece of sky like a painting fixed quiet, distant. A gust of wind scatters petals across the paving stones. You catch one. It's dry, crushed. You let it fall. You walk the length of the villa once more. Slowly now, touching columns, tracing edges, sensing what remains. The guests sleep. The servers wait. The night fades. Your footsteps echo softly, not loud, just enough. The villa is silent now, except for the faint creak of settling wood and the distant rasp of breath from someone snoring in the triclinium. You move slowly, deliberately through the dim corridor, your sandals brushing the stone in a rhythm that no longer matches the urgency of earlier hours. The feast has passed. The guests have faded. Now comes the final act, the one no guest sees. You open the side storeroom where you've kept the reserve supplies. Inside are 2 more amphorae of wine, 3 clean cushions, and a folded tablecloth you didn't need. You close the door again. Inventory will be taken later, not now. Down the hallway, a servant leans against the wall, eyes closed but upright. You touch his shoulder. He snaps awake. You tell him to begin gathering stray goblets and place them in the wash basin by the outer court. He nods without speaking, rubs his face, and starts. You step back into the triclinium. The smell is now heavier. Warm wine citrus oil, sweat, extinguished flames. You do not open the windows. The guests are still present. Even if asleep, they must not be disturbed. On the main couch, the host remains reclined. His posture has collapsed into something formless. One leg dangles. His hand rests in a bowl of crushed almonds. You check his breathing, soft, shallow, steady. You adjust his tunic. A guest begins to rise. It's the merchant from Ostia. He wipes his face with both hands, squints toward the nearest torch, then reaches down for his sandals. You kneel beside him, assist in tying the straps. He mutters something about good choices. You say nothing. He exits without another word. In the garden, the candle at Cassianus's mat has burned itself into a stub. The flame gutters, then dies. The dog that slept beside it is gone. Only a few paw prints remain in the dust. You retrieve the candle base still warm and place it on a nearby shelf. A server enters with a broom. You stop them. Too early. First, you must check the guest rooms. Some will stay the night. The hallway beyond the peristyle leads to 6 chambers. You open each one carefully. In the first, 2 guests share a bed, both fully clothed, back to back, snoring in harmony. In the second, a single pair of sandals, a folded cloak, and no one inside. The door is left open. That guest never arrived. In the third, a torch burns low and someone sleeps face down on the rug. You extinguish the flame, cover them with a folded blanket, and move on. In the fourth, empty, but the cushion shows a faint outline. Someone sat here for a time. The fifth is locked. The sixth holds 3 servants asleep in a circle, heads against the wall, feet stretched like spokes from a wheel. You let them be. Back in the central hall, a new tray is prepared, this one for cleanup. You supervise its contents, a bowl of lukewarm water, a handful of folded cloths, a flask of vinegar, a shallow basin of salt, and 2 wax tablets. These are not for guests. These are for you and your staff. Every feast leaves a trail of waste, of expense, of memory. You must account for it all. You begin recording. On the first tablet, what was served, what was spilled, what was stolen. You mark 2 amphorae wine unserved, 3 goblets broken, 1 cushion stained beyond use, 1 silver spoon missing. On the second tablet, guest behavior. Who complimented what? Who asked inappropriate questions? Who lingered too long? Who fell asleep? Who demanded more of something you didn't have? These records are not for public view. They are for planning the next event. In the rear of the villa, the fig tree stands still. You walk toward it. A few crushed petals lie at its base, sticky from spilled wine. A small clay token has been tied to one of its lower branches. You didn't place it. Perhaps a guest did. Perhaps one of the dancers. It shows a crude drawing, 2 figures holding a jug. You remove it and set it on a ledge. The tree doesn't need decoration. A soft rustle behind you. One of the dancers appears, barefoot, robe bundled in her arms. She nods once. You gesture toward the servants' quarters. She disappears silently, steps barely brushing the floor. You re-enter the villa's heart. The triclinium remains dim but not dark. You signal to begin lowering the lights. One by one, servants move to the lanterns and torches. They pinch each flame gently. They remove the oil bowls. They carry them to the storeroom. They leave only one lantern lit at the arch where the first guest entered. You remain a while longer, checking the floor, noting scuffs, scratches, small patches of candle wax. You brush away a grape stem with your toe. In the garden, you hear a faint thud, someone dropping onto a bench. Perhaps Flaccus. Perhaps someone else. You do not go. The garden needs no more direction. You walk the boundary of the triclinium one final time, fingertips grazing the fabric of each couch. You pause by the bronze bowl of incense, now dark. You pick up a fig leaf dry and curled. You place it in your pocket. The night has softened. The feast has ended. But the house must still be guarded, not from intruders, from forgetting. You take the long path back to the atrium, past the sleeping guests, past the rolled-up scrolls, past the wine stains, and the laughter that once echoed here only hours ago. You pause at the impluvium, its water surface now calm, reflecting only the ceiling's dark corners. You lean over it, catch your own reflection. Tired, but awake. The job is not over. The first true silence of the night has arrived, not the strained quiet of waiting guests or the hushed service between courses, but the kind of silence that lingers after everything has fallen away. The flames are out. The guests are asleep or gone. Even the dog that claimed Cassianus's mat has disappeared. The villa breathes in long, slow exhalations, walls holding still air, cooled sounds swallowed. You sit for the first time in hours. A bench in the vestibule carved from olive wood and smoothed by years of nervous visitors and forgotten sandals. Your shoulders fall. Your arms rest heavily on your thighs. You roll your neck once. The vertebrae answer with soft clicks. On the far side of the room, two servants gather the last of the empty dishes. Their hands are methodical. They do not speak. They move as you trained them, precise quiet, careful not to scrape metal on stone. They remove everything in pairs, never leaving one dish alone. You reach for your tablet. One more task. Apologies. You compose 3. The first is to a senator whose seat was moved without formal notice. You write a short note of explanation, carefully worded, referring to the last-minute flux of divine favor, which required you to adjust placement. He'll accept it. He's used to coded flattery. The second is to a merchant who lost a sandal and received no replacement. You offer a credit toward his next event, half off any imported meats, including those considered exotic or ceremonially rare. He'll appreciate the gesture more than the sandal. The third is to a matron who found a fig seed in her cup. You offer nothing, just a simple note. We appreciate your attention to detail. Your feedback improves the experience of all future guests. It's not sincere, but it's effective. You set the wax aside. You rise slowly. You gather the leftover oysters yourself. They've been stored in a shallow clay bowl in the cool chamber off the kitchen, no longer suitable for guests, but not yet spoiled. You place them in a sealed wooden crate lined with damp seaweed. They will be used tomorrow perhaps in a stew for the staff. Nothing is wasted. You check the spice shelf one last time. A jar of cumin half full. The cinnamon sticks mostly intact. The rose petals are gone, every last one. You smile. Barely. The corridor creaks under your weight as you pass back through the garden. The air smells faintly of oil and wilted herbs. Somewhere behind you, a door thuds softly into its frame, one of the chambers closing for the night. You do not turn around. At the fig tree, you pause. Someone has left a cup beside it, half full, Syracusan wine. You lift it, smell it, then set it down again. Not worth finishing. You glance at the sky. The moon is nearly overhead. Clouds drift slowly across the stars. You continue through the eastern hall. The donkey still stands. One garland remains drooping over its neck like a forgotten reward. You consider removing it, then decide not to. It deserves something for its efforts. You push open the heavy door leading to the supply corridor. Here the smells shift: wool, wood vinegar, lamp oil. Storage rooms on either side are filled with folded linens, dried fruit, spare jugs, tools, extra table legs, and bags of chalk. You check the inventory shelves. Nothing appears missing. You find a small note tucked into the corner of one shelf. It reads, "Only thank you." There's no name. You fold it and place it in your tablet case. Back in the atrium, one torch has reignited itself from a dropped wick. It flickers uncertainly. You approach, pinch it out, then rub the soot between your fingers. You check the fountain. The water has grown still again. A single rose petal floats in the corner. You flick it out, let it fall to the tile. The poet's patron stirs in the triclinium. You wait. He murmurs something unintelligible, then turns and settles again. You step backward, blend with the shadows, and move on. In the small room beside the entrance, a table has been laid with coins, payment from the host already delivered. You count them by touch. They're correct. You leave half for the staff. You place the other half in a sealed pouch, mark it, and tuck it into a crack behind the statue niche. You check your wax tablets again. One final note. A simple phrase scratched into the margin hours ago. Remind the host his sister's name is Julia. You pause. You erase it. You walk to the host's couch. He is still asleep, one hand now resting over his chest, the other on a cushion that has collapsed under his weight. His cup has fallen and rolled beside him, catching a sliver of starlight from the open ceiling. You pick it up. You place it on the table. You cover him with a clean cloth. You step back. You do not wake him. You do not speak. You do not write. You simply turn and begin to extinguish what remains. You wake just before dawn, not from rest, but because silence has grown too thick to ignore. The villa, still cloaked in shadows, is different now. Not asleep, but paused. The kind of quiet reserved for aftermaths and early regrets. You sit up slowly from the bench where you'd rested for a few hours, joints, stiff robe askew, tongue dry. No sound but the slow creak of stone cooling. You rise. The sandals you wore yesterday are still beside the threshold, dusted with fallen plaster. You slip them on and begin the slow walk through the house, checking again. It's your habit, your ritual. The feast is finished, but the memory must be shaped, reduced, recorded, and erased all at once. In the triclinium, the final guests have gone. Even the host is missing his couch empty but still warm. A wine ring circles the spot where his goblet sat. The cushions bear imprints of bodies and elbows, heads and collapsed knees. One fig stem lies perfectly centered on the main table. You leave it. You walk to the corner couch. The cushion there is torn. A silver pin remains embedded in the fabric. A brooch, perhaps. You remove it carefully, turn it once in your hand. It bears a leaf motif, likely a senator's wife's. You place it in the lost items bowl in the vestibule. It joins a single sandal, 2 bronze rings, and a carved dice. You walk to the kitchen. The fires are out, the oven stones cold. The cook sleeps against the wall legs, stretched apron bunched under his head. A rat scampers across the far beam, but does not stop. The leftovers have been removed, the serving trays stacked, the knives washed and oiled. A jug of water sits uncapped half full. You drink from it. You pass the laundry slaves, already working. 2 girls rinse stained linens in stone basins. One slaps cloth against the edge in slow rhythm. The other brushes wine from the fold of a tunic sleeve with stale urine and crushed chalk. Neither looks up. You stop briefly in the atrium. The impluvium holds just a thin sheet of water, now its surface disturbed only by the breeze. A fig leaf rests in one corner, curled brown at the edges. You leave it. Outside, dawn has begun. You move to the garden gate and unlatch it. The hinges groan softly. The street beyond is empty save for a cart in the distance. Its wheel squeaks. The driver hums. You look up. The stars are fading. The moon is gone. Clouds streak across the pale sky. You return inside. A servant brings you the morning report scratched onto a broken tablet with a dull stylus. 4 goblets missing. 1 tunic ruined. 3 guests still inside rooms. 3, 6. All candles extinguished. Donkey removed. Payment received. You nod. The donkey has been returned to the storeroom. Its cart disassembled. Its garland tossed into the refuse basket. You find the garland later and retrieve it. You hang it over the storage hook where lanterns are kept. Just for now. The astrologer's mat has been taken in. The brass bowl cleaned. The star stones returned to their pouch. You glance inside. One is missing. You do not care which one. You place the pouch on the shelf. In the staff hall, the servers rest on reed mats, their limbs folded, faces blank. You step softly between them, checking each one. A boy stirs, his eyes open. You press your finger to your lips. He nods, then turns away. You walk the corridor beside the guest chambers. 2 doors are open now. The guests within are preparing to leave. Their voices are hushed. You hear coins clinking. One mutters about sandals. Another sneezes. You send a servant with water and a cloth. You send another to open the main doors. The air changes. Light begins to seep down the hallway from the vestibule. It is not bright, not yet. but it carries the pale tone of completion. The night is truly over. In the courtyard, you kneel by the fountain. You remove the dried petals. You wipe the rim with a cloth. A silver coin glints at the bottom. You leave it. You stand. You stretch your back. You roll your shoulders. Then you step into the triclinium once more. The floor must be scrubbed, the couches cleaned, the curtains aired, the dishes returned, the scrolls rewritten, the guests remembered, the excess forgiven. Historians still argue whether the true art of Roman entertainment lay in the opulence of the event or the elegance of its concealment afterward. You believe both were necessary, but only one required effort. The host will wake later today and recall very little. The guests will remember fragments. One will ask for a recipe. One will misremember where they sat. One will say something about a donkey. You will not be mentioned. You are the planner, the orchestrator, the hand behind the curtain, the dust behind the gold, the quiet footstep behind the applause. And so you gather your tools, you collect your thoughts, you prepare for the next. The sun is rising now, soft, filtered, not yet hot. Its rays stretch over the rooftops like the slow unfolding of parchment. They slip through cracks in the wooden shutters, touch the walls, and scatter across the tiles with faint warmth. You stand near the threshold of the triclinium watching as light catches the edge of a bronze bowl. The villa for the first time in days begins to resemble a house again. No laughter, no liars, no servers in motion, only residue. You begin the process of clearing the couches, slowly, deliberately. The first step is removal. Cushions are lifted, examined, then placed in stacks according to damage. Those with wine stains go into one pile, oil in another. Those that smell only faintly of perfume are placed in the salvage corner. Next, the draperies. You instruct 2 servants to unhook the red silk panels that lined the triclinium's interior walls. They work in silence. One trips briefly. The silk does not tear. You nod for them to continue. As they fold, you walk the space in wide circles, looking for the marks that linger. A broken earring, a goblet shard, a faint footprint left in spiced oil shaped like a crescent moon. You make a note on your wax tablet, stone scrubber to pass twice over southeast corner. In the vestibule, the sandal pile remains. You organize it quickly, pairs, singles, scraps. Some are recognizable. Some are already claimed. A few will be discarded. One child-sized sandal seems to have no owner. It may have been brought by a guest's attendant. You place it near the side door. If no one claims it by midday, it goes to the temple's lost items box. You pass by the garden on your way to the storage chamber. The mat is gone. The brass incense bowl has been polished. The fig tree holds steady in the center, unmoved by everything that's happened around it. One fresh fig hangs low unplucked. You leave it. It will fall in its own time. The scent of the feast lingers faintly here. You catch hints of cinnamon myrrh, warm fig, and something floral perhaps from the cushions or from the perfume soaked into the servant tunics. You make a mental note to rinse all fabrics twice. In the kitchen, the remaining oil has been measured and sealed. 2 jars remain half full. You take a small ladle and fill a bronze cup. You swirl it. Pale gold. Clean. You return it to storage. You speak to the cook briefly. He's awake now, sitting on a stool, one shoe on, one off. He tells you that 2 knives are missing and 1 ladle is bent. You nod. He asks what's next. You tell him tomorrow a smaller meal. Just 15 guests, mostly poetry readers. He winces. You hand him a list. He takes it without looking. He begins to write a recipe in the margin. You exit the kitchen and pass the sleeping quarters again. 2 guests remain. Room 3, a young man still fully clothed, one arm across his chest, the other hanging off the cot. Room 6, the widow, awake now, sitting upright, her feet on the floor adjusting her hair with fingers that tremble. You leave her a bowl of warm water and a cloth. You do not speak. You gather the last of the leftover wine, not to serve again, but for cleaning. The acidic blend makes for an excellent polish. You distribute it among the servants with brushes made of horsehair and straw. The walls are wiped, the door frames rinsed. The mosaic in the atrium is cleaned square by square. You stoop and scrub a single tile yourself. It bears the image of a fish swimming toward a painted vine. The paint has faded, but you still see the shape. You trace it once, then rise. You return to the triclinium. The couches are bare now, the cushions stacked, the floors swept, the dishes packed and counted. The garlands have withered. 1 leaf crumbles as you lift it. You sweep it into your hand, then into your pocket. You give orders, lock the amphorae. Repack the musical instruments. Deliver the leftover silver to the host's steward. Burn the soiled linens that cannot be saved. Fold the others and place cedar chips between each layer. Wash the copper basins with vinegar and salt. Air the wine jugs before storing. Distribute 1 bread roll to each staff member. Send a cup of warm water to the poet. Post a watch at the front gate. Everything slows now, even the air. You sit once more in the vestibule next to the scroll cabinet. The list you made 2 days ago now rests in your lap, almost illegible. Wax has softened. Marks have faded. But the memory is still clear. You remember the delivery of figs, the missing panther, the painted donkey, the flute player's nose solo, the parrot, the girl in the Venus robe, the roasted thrush pyramid, Uncle Flaccus speaking to stone, the donkey approving, the guests drifting into sleep. You remember everything, not because it was extraordinary, but because it happened. And in Rome, that's enough. The feast is done. The villa breathes again. You rest your hands in your lap. And you wait. The next one is already coming. You just don't know its name yet. The morning sun has fully risen, painting the stone walls of the villa in soft hues of yellow and gray. The roof tiles glint faintly. Pigeons settle on the lintel above the gate, their claws scraping against terracotta. Inside, the air remains cool. The feast is over. The guests are mostly gone, and the work of erasure continues. You open the main storeroom. This chamber tucked behind the atrium contains your records, scrolls, tablets, sample invitations, fabric swatches, diagrams of table layouts, and sealed jars of pigment and chalk. You enter, remove your sandals, and step carefully across the floor, where dust and scraps from prior events rest like old thoughts. You unroll a scroll labeled Juno's Feast. Spring. It documents an event held 6 months ago. You glance through it, a different guest list, a different menu, a different problem involving a caged leopard and an allergic senator. You note that the floor pattern then was cross ribbon instead of wave spiral, and that the main lanterns were green, not gold. You place it aside. Then you take out a fresh sheet. You begin the new record. Date 6th day before the Kalends. Time evening until 2nd hour after midnight. Host Lucius Crasinius Petitus. Theme: fertility, domestic peace, and the fine art of restlessness. Featured elements: roasted thrush pyramid, flute solos, painted donkey, parrot-assisted storytelling, incense procession, late arriving astrologer, absence of panther, surprise approval by donkey. You write slowly, carefully. For each course, you list the main flavors. For each guest category, you record known preferences, observed tolerances, and points of friction. You underline the moments where performance succeeded and highlight the lapses. You mark a double line beside the phrase, dry rose petals short by half sack. This scroll is not decorative, it's instructional. It is what makes the next gathering possible. You finish writing. You roll the scroll tightly and place it into a sealed clay jar marked with charcoal Venus Night Crasinius year of Consul Petus. You place it on the middle shelf next to Rain Banquet Cato and just beneath 7 platters 1 fire. You leave the storeroom. A girl waits for you in the corridor. She carries a shallow basket containing 3 recovered rings, 1 bronze clasp, and a slice of honey bread wrapped in a fig leaf. You take the rings and the clasp. You hand her the bread. She does not thank you. She simply walks away, chewing. Outside, more guests are leaving. You stand in the vestibule and observe them quietly. The general's widow departs with a shawl draped around her shoulders and a wine stain on one sandal. She doesn't notice. A servant holds the gate open for her. She nods once toward no one in particular and vanishes into the morning haze. 2 poets leave together arguing softly over a misquoted line about Mars and swans. One carries his shoes, the other hums off-key. You watch them go. A senator's aide departs next, moving with a stagger. He carries a scroll he did not arrive with. He will remember only the saffron cushions and the taste of fig glaze. That is enough. 1 guest remains. The merchant from Ostia. He stands alone by the fig tree, hands behind his back, watching the leaves stir in the breeze. You walk over. He doesn't turn at first. Then he does. He nods. You nod back. No words. He exits through the side gate. You give orders for the final clean. The staff moves through the villa in sections. Walls wiped, lamps collected, curtains shaken out over the garden, lantern hooks inspected. You hear the quiet rhythm of cloth on tile of brooms brushing dried petals of brushes tapping wood. The villa slowly returns to a neutral state. You visit the donkey. It sits now in the storeroom again, unmoving, a quiet relic. 1 garland remains on its left ear, crushed and browning. You remove it and toss it into the ash bin. A few petals stick to your fingers. You shake them off. Historians still argue whether props used in Roman feasts were meant to endure or simply to exist in the moment. You believe they serve only until silence returns. Then they wait. Or they rot. You check the incense stock, 4 cones left. Enough for one brief prayer. You walk to the household altar. You light the smallest cone and place it on the bronze plate. The smoke rises slowly, then leans to the left, drawn by the faintest breeze. You bow your head once, not for thanks, for closure. The servers begin preparing the floor sealant, a mix of ground marble oil and a dash of ash. It's applied thin, rubbed in with wool. It will restore the tiles' shine by evening. In the back courtyard, the linen is hung. It flutters in loose rows, pale against the rising light. In the garden, the fig tree drops one fruit. It lands softly, splits, and rests without attention. You return inside. You cross the triclinium one last time. The floor is clean. The cushions stacked. The walls bare. The scent faint now is almost gone. You sit on the edge of the main couch, and you breathe. You hear nothing but your own breath, the tap of a servant's heel, and the flap of laundry in the wind. It is done, for now. You step outside the villa briefly as the sun climbs higher into the pale Roman sky. The street is mostly empty, just a handful of vendors setting up their carts, the soft sweep of straw brooms against stone, the far-off clatter of mule hooves pulling a cart heavy with amphorae. You squint at the light. It's the kind of quiet morning that feels too clean for memory, too clear to contain the chaos of the night before. You walk a slow loop around the block. A few neighbors greet you. One waves, another pretends not to see you. A third, a man with soot on his arms and a crooked shoulder, mutters, "Big night," and keeps walking. You return inside. The villa is changing now, not back into what it was before the feast, but into what it becomes after such things, a shell echoing with traces of laughter, wine perfume, and decisions best left unrecorded. The rooms are cleaner now, the air lighter. The servers walk with less urgency. They smile again faintly. The worst is over. But not everything is finished. You find your way to the rear writing chamber where two scribes sit copying the seating chart onto permanent scroll. One has ink on her cheek. The other has rubbed a hole through the parchment and is quietly splicing in a patch. You correct a spelling, Domitia, not Domitia. You clarify a title, Praetorian clerk, not Praetorian cousin. Then you leave them. You pass the laundry chamber. Half the tunics have been scrubbed. The others soak in grayish water. One server stands by the basin holding a tunic above her head, watching the water drip from its hem. She stares at it like a prophecy. You don't interrupt. You walk to the storeroom where the leftover goblets are being counted. 10 bronze cups remain. 1 with a bent rim. 2 with initials scratched underneath, likely taken from another household. You will return them later quietly. A staff member begins polishing the bent one. You tell him to stop. It's not worth saving. You drop it into the discard bucket with a soft clunk. You pass by the outer door where the hired musicians wait to be paid. They do not speak. You hand them small leather pouches, coins carefully counted based on hours performed, instruments transported, and quality of performance. The oldest nods once. The youngest asks if you'll need them next month. You say maybe. They leave without fanfare. You step once more into the triclinium. One couch has been moved to clean the floor beneath. You check the grout between the tiles, some still stained with wine. A girl scrubs it gently with a twig dipped in salt water. You nod and keep walking. In the vestibule you find the poet, not the one who recited. The other one, the patron's guest. The man who said nothing all night, who watched with a stillness that felt deliberate. He sits on the bench, sandals off, fingers steepled. He sees you. You nod. He asks, "Was it a success? You consider." Then you say, "It ended without complaint." He nods. Then it was perfect. He puts on his sandals and leaves. In the rear corridor you pass the donkey cart. Disassembled now, its pieces lined against the wall. The wheels, the frame, the garlands stripped away. One staff member is brushing dust off the painted side panel. It no longer sparkles. You say nothing. You walk past. In the atrium, the sunlight hits the water of the impluvium, directly now causing a ripple of gold light to shimmer across the ceiling. You pause there. One servant joins you. He asks where the leftover wine is to be stored. You tell him one jar in the cellar, one in the courtyard storeroom, one to be poured out. Poured out. You nod. Not all wine is for keeping. Some is for forgetting. He bows slightly and walks off. You go next to the host's study. The door is open. He is seated, bleary-eyed, rubbing his temples. A servant applies oil to his forehead. He sees you and lifts one hand in vague acknowledgement. You walk in, hand him a small scroll. "Guest notes," you say. He nods. Doesn't open it. You hand him a second scroll. "Expenses." This he does open. He skims it quickly. Eyes pause over certain figures. He frowns, but only briefly. He rolls it up again and sets it beside a dish of grapes he won't eat. "You did well," he says. You nod. You exit the room. Down the hall, two boys return with a basket of wild herbs, left over from the parrot's handler. You instruct them to hang the herbs near the oven. They will dry in 2 days. The parrot has been returned. You don't ask if it remembered anything. You walk once more through the guest chambers, empty now. Beds remade. Lanterns removed. Nothing left but the smell of old perfume and wine-soaked feet. In the hallway, someone has drawn a figure into the dust, a dancing man with long fingers and no eyes. You smear it with your foot. Outside, the street begins to fill with voices, carts and footsteps. You feel it, the shift from night to day, from memory to routine. And then it hits you. You forgot one thing. The sweet cakes ordered for the host's niece never delivered. Still in the kitchen, likely. You head back. You find them wrapped, untouched, stacked in a corner box. You unwrap one. You take a bite. It's dry but sweet. You finish it. Then you call for a runner. Have the cakes sent to the temple of Ceres. A donation. Let them be eaten in peace. And with that, the last task is done. For now. The streets beyond the villa walls are now fully awake. Merchants shout prices over baskets of olives. A boy chases a loose dog with a rope. Somewhere a pot cracks loudly against stone, and no one reacts. Inside, the noise is distant, muffled by thick walls, and the lull that always follows a Roman gathering of scale. You walk slowly through the rear corridor, passing niches where oil lamps once flickered. Only soot remains now, painting small halos above each arch. A servant approaches and hands you a folded cloth. Inside, a short list names items left behind and 2 minor complaints. You scan the note. One guest claims the peacock was undercooked. Another says her cup was refilled too frequently. You raise an eyebrow, then write a note on a wax tablet, send lemon balm water, and polite reply to both. You hand it to the runner and gesture toward the main door. He vanishes. In the courtyard, the sun strikes the top of the fig tree. A bird perches briefly, hops twice, then flutters away. The ground is clear. No petals, no cups, no footprints. You step to the edge and inspect the base of the tree. A small clay charm has been tied to one root, likely by a guest or a servant. You don't recognize the symbol, something between a fish and a flame. You leave it. Your feet lead you to the south hallway, where tools are stored behind a wooden door, warped from steam. You retrieve the long-handled broom and begin sweeping the central hall. Not the way a servant does, fast in wide arcs, but slowly tracing each tile, listening for the scrape of straw on stone. You've done this before, after every event. The broom becomes a metronome. Swish, step, swish, turn. Dust collects in uneven piles, fragments of leaf peppercorns, hair wax droplets hardened into tiny hills. You gather it all and drop it into a low basket. No one thanks you. That's not the point. You hear a bell at the gate. You move to the vestibule. A woman stands outside holding a crate of dried flowers. Her hands are stained violet. Her sandals are tied with string. She says nothing. She lifts the crate once. You nod. You don't remember ordering dried flowers. You take them anyway. She leaves. You carry the crate into the side storage room. Inside, you find the remnants of last week's rose order half wilted. You mix the new with the old, tie the stems, and hang them over the smoke vent. They'll dry fully by next week. You'll use them again. No one will know. You pass the kitchen again. The cook is dozing on a stool, arms folded, head back, mouth slightly open. His apron is stained. His ladle is tucked into his belt like a dagger. You let him sleep. On the stone counter, the last of the leftover pastries rest on a tray. The fig glaze has begun to crystallize. You take one. You leave the rest for the scribe girls. They'll appreciate it. In the guest quarters, the final room has been stripped. The bedding removed. The mat rolled. The sandals taken. You find only one item, left: a thin necklace of twisted copper wire and 3 blue beads. You hold it up. It's light. It catches the sun briefly. You place it in the lost property jar. The jar is almost full now. You walk through the main hall again. The cushions have been aired and beaten. One has been restuffed. You sit on it for a moment. It's uneven. You mark it for replacement. A servant walks past carrying a folded curtain. You nod. She nods back. The villa is clean now. The only signs of the gathering are what you choose to leave: a faint scent of herbs, a few drops of wax that wouldn't lift a pressed fig leaf between 2 wall tiles near the door. You leave them all. You sit briefly at the main table. You unroll your wax tablet and begin preparing the next list, not for another feast, but for this villa's reset. Patch floor crack in East Hall. Repair, cushion. Seam. Return. Wine jugs to host's cellar. Send thank you. Scroll to the musicians. Distribute leftover bread to temple kitchens. Clean donkey wheels. Refresh incense stock. Dispose of empty amphorae discreetly. You finish the list and scratch a final line beneath it. Then you roll the tablet closed and tuck it into your belt. Outside, a delivery boy arrives with nothing. He simply appears, looks at you, and says, "You asked me to come back. You didn't." But you tell him to wait. You hand him the crate of discarded bronzeware, bent spoons, broken handles, dented cups, and tell him to take it to the smith near the temple of Vulcan. They'll melt it down. He nods and goes. You remain in the doorway watching the dust settle behind his feet. A few more guests may write in the coming days. Some may exaggerate. Others may forget. One or two may ask if there's another event planned. There is. But not yet. You return inside. You walk the atrium one more time. You pause at the impluvium. The water has caught a single floating thread of red silk. You bend. You pick it up. You watch it drip. You dry it on your palm. And then you walk away. The sun has reached its midday arc, casting sharp shadows beneath the arches and sending warm lines of gold across the mosaic floors. You stand in the triclinium once more, now emptied and echoing. The walls, once draped in silk and light, are bare. The room smells of damp stone and faint lavender. You walk slowly along the edges of the space, passing each couch frame, each torch bracket, each faint scuff mark left behind by sandal or tray. The servers are gone. The cook is asleep again. The poet's bird, thankfully, did not return. And in the silence the house finally exhales. You make your way to the garden path. Here, a new rhythm has begun. Servants dig gently near the roots of the fig tree, turning the soil just enough to freshen it. One stops to sip water from a small bowl. Another hums a tune under his breath. The garden no longer hosts guests, only labor. You cross the path and enter the back corridor. The room where the dancers rehearsed is quiet. A bowl of dusted chalk sits untouched on the floor. You pick it up, hold it in your palm, then pour it slowly into a cloth sack. It won't be needed again for some time. In the northern alcove, you inspect the torch brackets. One is loose. You adjust it with a wedge of wood and press it firm. These are the gestures that go unnoticed, and that is why they matter. Next, the storeroom. You count the inventory: 12 platters, 20 goblets, 9 ladles, 1 chipped amphora, 2 unopened jars of preserved olives, 1 bolt of unused linen, a stack of unused scrolls. You record everything. Nothing can disappear. You take a brief moment in the shade. Sitting on a bench near the laundry courtyard, you watch linens dry on ropes. They snap lightly in the breeze. The rhythm soothes. A rhythm you built, managed, closed. A young boy passes you with a folded letter. You read it. It's from the senator whose place was moved. He thanks you and requests a front couch next time. You nod at the paper. You'll arrange it. Historians will never write his name. But you will remember where he prefers to sit. You enter the main corridor again. You adjust a loose tile near the entrance with the heel of your sandal. You pick up a spoon left on a windowsill. You rub a smudge off the statue's base. You stop at the vestibule. The donkey is gone. The cart too. Only a wheel remains leaning against the wall. You place your hand on it. Warm. Still real. You gather your things, a folded list, a pouch of coins, a chipped stylus, and one last fig. You hold the fig in your palm, press it gently. It gives slightly under your thumb. You leave it in the offering bowl by the door. You open the gate. You step into the sunlight. The city waits, but not yet. Not today. You step back into the house for just a moment more. The shadows have softened. The birds in the courtyard sing low, even tones. The last of the incense has cooled, and the air carries only a whisper of its scent. There are no footsteps now, no voices, no guests lingering at the door. You run your fingers over the curve of the bench as you pass. Your pace slows. Everything does. Even the sound of the leaves brushing together in the breeze feels more like a rhythm than a sound. In the kitchen, the last coals sit cold and black. The amphorae rest in their places. The herbs are tied. The floors are swept smooth. The event has finished, but the memory hangs loosely as if waiting to dissolve on its own. You move to the atrium and pause at the edge of the impluvium. The water reflects nothing now, just soft gray and light. A place once busy, now hollowed out by silence and stillness. You lean against the wall. You feel the coolness of the stone through your tunic. You close your eyes. The city hums outside, but here time pauses. There are no guests left to please, no trays left to fill, no names left to remember, just airstone and the hush that follows when everything important has already happened. You take one last deep breath, and you let it out. Not in a rush, but as slowly as the room darkens after a torch goes out. The work is over. The house will rest now, and so will you.